Georgia lawyers Bob and Irreverent D talk law. Listen up for stories about how things really happen in our legal system. Who are these guys? Dwayne Singleton, Irreverent D, is a criminal defense attorney in the state of Georgia. Benjamin O. Benson, a.k.a. Bob, is a personal injury attorney in Atlanta. On today's episode, Irreverent D censors himself.
Well, I'll talk about it later. Because you're always recording, and you'll put it on there if I say something.
The boys do chair yoga.
I told you the chair said, hey, one at a time, buddy.
I'm supposed to be taller than him.
And Bob has an episode.
Oh, come on.
Anyways,
You gotta read the envelope.
Yeah, gotta read the envelope.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I was just pausing.
Now, sit back and take a listen as Bob and Irreverent D talk law.
Welcome to the Bob and Irreverent D Talk Law podcast.
My chair's not happy with me today.
No, you're not. And
Welcome, everybody.
and we're not disclosing which take of this podcast this is, or of the introduction. We're glad that you joined us. We're glad that you're with us. The wonderful thing, Dwayne,
Yes.
about podcast is that you can consume it at just about any time you want,
Wherever you want.
wherever you want. You
On
could-
your porcelain throne, alone by yourself.
That's
you can
right.
binge watch a little, Bob and Irreverent D, or on the big screen TV with all your friends if you want
right.
to.
If you are in private, though,
Yeah.
I highly recommend that you make sure that your Bluetooth is turned off
That's right.
so that it's not like streaming to whatever your portable speakers are. That would be bad. But you know where you can't watch it
Where's that?
in your car while you're driving.
Right?
Right, don't be doing.
Or the jury room.
You should most definitely not be watching our podcast.
Hey, I want to check on the law. Let me watch Bob and Irreverent D and see what
I mean, you should check on the law by watching our podcast, but just not during jury duty.
Right.
Because you can, speaking of duty,
Get a little trouble.
you
what
can
I would
get a
like,
little trouble.
I would like, hey, if you don't mind, just in the bottom comments, just comment where you're watching from.
Right.
On the throne, in Georgia,
Right.
Alabama, North Carolina, wherever. Just let us know.
Yeah, we need to get some situational awareness of like, where are we talking to people to? I'll tell you, I watch our own podcast, not necessarily because I like to see myself or I like to hear myself speak, but I like to watch it just a little bit faster speed.
I listen to it sped up.
Do you
Yeah.
do the 1.2 or
I
the
do the
1.3?
podcast sped up on, and I
Yeah.
listen to it. I
listen
can't
to
stand to watch it. I'm like, oh my God, who is that fat man? Where is he coming from?
Well, speaking of jury misconduct,
Yes.
Dwayne, let's talk about the news.
And now, the news.
The news.
The
There
news.
we go.
My kids love that every time. They're like, the news. I love it. Listen,
What we got?
there are some jurors who I think are going to get in trouble. The news item today has to do with a Cherokee County verdict.
Yes.
So plaintiff's attorneys tried a case up in Cherokee County. Now we should pause here.
Attorneys beware.
Beware.
Beware of Cherokee
This is where
County.
plaintiffs' attorneys'
Go to
cases
die.
go to die. Go to die. It is tough. And in fact, the plaintiffs' attorneys in this case say it's tough to win a case in Cherokee County.
Criminal defense too. Any other place, if it's a misdemeanor amount of marijuana, they just dismiss it.
Right?
Not
We're
in
interested
Cherokee
in this.
County, because they can't get the crime lab to test it anymore. In Cherokee County, they hire private labs to test the marijuana.
By the way, just a point of reference in our bibliographic references.
Yes.
If you want to know more about that, watch episode 1. We cover that in detail about marijuana and what's going on with testing.
Hemp
Anyway,
products.
Hemp.
Products.
yes, hemp or Kemp.
All right.
All right.
So what happened with this juror? What did they do?
All right. So here's what happens. This plaintiff tries his case in Cherokee County, and gets a $1.2 million verdict for his injuries.
Which is like $1 billion verdict anywhere else in the state.
Anywhere else, it would be a 7-figure case.
Right.
That's right. Not a wait. It would be an 8-figure case, right? It would be in the tens of millions.
Right.
Maybe. At any rate, the plaintiff's attorneys said, we were reasonably happy with this, given what we just talked about.
Right.
Note that just kind of generally, we don't like lawsuits around here in Cherokee County kind of feel. But then what happened was after the verdict, the next business day, one of the jurors reached out to the plaintiff's attorney and said, listen, I need to talk to you about something. It's been keeping me up all weekend.
Which this never happens. This is like
from a Grisham novel.
Yeah, I mean, rarely. I've had it happen one time in my whole career.
You're going to tell me about it.
I'll tell you about it.
All right. At any rate, so what they found out was that 2 of the jurors in the jury, did what those other jurors felt was improperly influencing the outcome of the deliberations. So just to give you some context, what happens at the end of the trial is a charging conference. Right? And then charges. Dwayne, tell us about what are jury charges.
So the charging conference is the judge is supposed to be the one that gives you the law and tells the jury how they're supposed to operate. And so at the end, he reads through all of these charges that both sides have agreed upon. That's what he's going to read to them. He reads through all of the law and everything that applies and tells them what their job is and how they're supposed to go and deliberate and make a decision on this verdict.
Can we talk a little bit more about jury charges for a
Sure.
second? Because I was teaching a seminar
Right.
about how to represent people in personal injury claims. And my 2 overarching themes during that seminar was 1, listen, you don't represent cases. You represent people.
Sure.
We've
talked a lot about that.
Right? We represent people. But also, what you really need to do is teach your people about the law.
Sure.
Right? You can use legal terminology. We do sometimes. But really, what you need is a plain English version of what the law is. Guess what, Dwayne? There is a plain English version of what the law is. It's in the jury charges.
Yes.
Right?
It's where they try to break it down and make it as plain as possible.
Somebody has...
You're not just reading the statute to them.
That's right. Somebody has taken pains to describe exactly what negligence means.
Right.
And what pain and suffering damages are. I mean, you and I use the term pain and suffering, but it's actually not called that in the jury charge.
Right.
It's something else.
And when I prep a case, I actually prep backwards. I actually decide on what my closing argument's going to be, but I look at my jury charges first, figure out what charges we're going to ask for, and then I prepare my closing, and then I build my case from there.
That's brilliant. I wish I was that forward thinking. But you're right. It is the last thing that the jury will hear before they go decide your case.
Right.
Is, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I charge you that negligence means, the want of whatever it is. Right. And
on criminal cases, a lot of times the charge may say intentional, right? And so I may focus my whole case around whether or not this was intentional, because I know that's going to be the last thing they hear from the judge, and that's going to be what I'm going to really focus on in my closing statement. Even though the judge is going to give them law, it's so much of the law that the judge has to give them at one time. You really got to focus it in for them so they know what to listen for.
So working backwards from there, right there. So that's the jury deliberation part. The judge says, "Okay, here's the law. And one of those charges is you are not to do any outside research.
Don't bring in any other facts. Don't go out to the scene. Don't do any of this stuff." He tells them that at the beginning and again at the end.
And in my experience, all throughout the trial.
Right.
Every night if you're retiring for the evening. You're going to reconvene in the morning.
Don't look anything up. Don't get on your phone. You can tell your family you're in a trial, but you can't tell them what the trial's about. Right.
Now, let's just talk about that for a second from a policy standpoint.
Sure.
Right? Because, I mean, to be fair, there are tons of things that we're told not to do that we still, kind of do.
Well, that's part of being irreverent, right?
That's part of being irreverent. You're not supposed to speed. But we do. There's this thing that happens on my way to the office. And I have a confession to make. I hope no law enforcement people are listening right now, but
It's a hypothetical situation.
It's a hypothetical thing.
Yeah.
Right? There is a left turn lane.
Yeah.
When I come to the office, because I'm working all the time for our clients, it's usually very early and no one is coming. But there is
Sun
a
hasn't
dedicated,
come up yet.
like especially now, right? But there is a dedicated left turn arrow that stays red. And I'm looking around and there are zero headlights, there are no cars coming, and I think to myself, yeah, who's going to know?
Nobody's going to know.
Nobody's going to, it doesn't matter.
Who's going to know?
Like,
Nobody's
going
going
to
know. They're going to find out, right?
So tell me why it is, right, that doing outside research as a juror, why it isn't something like that? Like, who does it really hurt?
Because we fight tooth and nail before your trial starts to determine what legally is allowed to be told to the jury and what legally is not allowed to be told to the jury. So if we could just tell them whatever and the defense could just tell them whatever, then people would bring in all these outside factors that has nothing to do with what the jury's there to decide. And people would be swayed because insurance companies make billions of dollars and the law enforcement makes billions of dollars by locking people up, and it's the jail industry and all this stuff. That's the reason why we're really here is politics and money and blah, blah, blah. I'm not allowed to say those types of things. It'll get me a mistrial because I'm influencing the jury on things that's not in the law, right? It's not what they're really there to decide. And so if the
I'm
juror
just going to stop you there because that's really kind of disingenuous. Coming from you, of all people, that's really disingenuous because I know for a fact that you're encouraging jurors to essentially disregard the law when you're making arguments, right? This jury nullification thing.
I do, on occasion, focus on jury nullification because
Right.
a juror does have a right not to enforce a law they don't agree with. But I'm not allowed to say that.
Oh, so it's the opposite. You're not actually allowed to say it.
Yeah.
But you're allowed to imply it.
Right.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
I can talk about the Georgia Constitution.
I take
I
it
can
back.
talk about things that are actually written in the law, but I can't just stand up and say, you ain't got to follow the law, guys.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't go up there and say, yeah, maybe he had some marijuana, but it's up to you. It's up to you.
No, I can't say it's up to you.
You could say that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Well, whatever the case, if you're a juror,
But they're
though,
not supposed to be out doing research.
And that's what happened in
Going
this-
out to the scene and hiring private investigators and getting apps.
Didn't we talk about that on another?
Yep.
There was another one, but remember on that podcast we covered that lady that went. It was in a criminal case, and she went to go. She drove the route
Right.
herself to find out if it actually took 13 minutes.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I remember that, and she got in trouble.
Yes.
Rightfully so.
Yes.
Right.
Because she was told not to do that.
She was told not to get outside information.
So the jurors are required to be honest when answering questions, and they can't get in trouble during voir dire for being honest. Like, yeah, I smoke weed, or yeah, I believe this should be legalized.
Yeah.
But when we
Unless
don't
it's advocating for the violent overthrow of the government,
Right.
then maybe they would be disqualified.
But if we don't disclose those things and we hide the fact that, like, we're an insurance adjuster and we've done this for years, and then we go and research and do separate stuff, that's when the misconduct really bothers me.
Yeah. In fact, that's what happened here.
Right.
So according to several of the jurors afterwards, the foreman and another juror were actually, during the deliberation process, going on their phones and looking up information on similar cases to find out what the verdicts in those cases or what the settlements in those cases were, and using that information to influence the deliberations of the rest of the jury members.
Tisk, tisk, tisk.
I mean, that actually did hurt somebody in
Yes.
this case, at least according to the plaintiff's attorneys in this case, because some of the jurors had said they were considering awarding, $3 million, $5 million, $15 million, but the whole jury pool were persuaded by these two guys, these two jurors that were.
So, and the reason why that's so important is because if me as the attorney tried to give this information to the jury and say, or the defense attorney tried to give this information to the jury, it would have caused a mistrial. Like, you're not allowed to say, well, all these other cases settle for this because that has nothing to do with this case. So when they go on these apps and start looking this stuff up and, researching stuff on their own, they're violating the rules, but they're also putting into evidence things. Well, they're using things that weren't put into evidence.
Just to give you the details, specifically what one of the jurors' affidavit says. That's an affidavit is a sworn statement. That the one juror during deliberations accessed whatever resource or database that he found this information from on his phone, and then verbally shared that information with the other jurors in an attempt to get the other jurors to lessen the verdict.
Wow.
That is, in my view, dishonest.
Right.
It's like it's not just bad policy, but like that's different than, okay, maybe I'm going to go through this red light because there's nobody else around. That's like pernicious.
Well,
right?
And it affected the outcome of the case.
It sure affected the plaintiff.
Right.
Now, eventually, what the news article says is they got a $1.2 million verdict, and then all this stuff happened with the jurors, and this was all coming to light. And eventually, I'm assuming, it doesn't say because of that, but I'm assuming because of that, they ended up settling for more than what their actual verdict was.
Yeah, because, they would have had to retry the case, right?
They had to retry it, or
Yeah.
it was just, if you're I can't imagine. It would be a Grisham novel if this were the case, that this was on the insurance company or the defense attorney.
Like they put a sleeper on there.
Right.
They had a secret agent that sat, which
That's
would be, I've often thought about that. It would be really simple to do.
How could you? Can we talk about how you would do it?
Oh,
yeah, it's in a Grisham novel. Remember the movie, the book,
was the
what
Juror?
was it called? The Juror.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, he did that. He went to all these different places hoping to get put on the jury pool. Yeah, that's what you're talking about.
No, I just think you could get a fake ID and wait for them to call the jury and see who didn't announce their name, and then stick it on there and be like, "Hey, it's me." They don't check those things.
No, they really don't. Yeah, it would be. Or if you have a cousin that got called for jury duty,
Yeah.
and you slip him a couple $100, whatever. Yeah. Now, what the plaintiff's attorney, now understand, this is rhetoric.
Right.
These are not facts necessarily, but the plaintiff's attorney said that the foreperson, the juror, one of the jurors that was getting this outside information, lied to us during jury selection.
Right.
In that he said that he could be impartial, and that he denied having a history of working for an insurance company or evaluating personal injury claims. And it turns out that's not true. He lied during voir dire, jury selection.
I've heard it said 1,000 different ways.
1,000 different. We have this tendency to want to. Do I have something on my face?
No, you did yours, and so I did mine because I thought you were telling me something.
Neither one of us. No.
Okay.
I just had an itch. Yeah. Anyways,
we spend too much time together.
We spent. So during jury selection, tell me, what are you doing when you're asking jury members questions?
I'm just trying to get them. Well, first of all, it's like being on a blind date with 60 different people simultaneously. So
interesting. Okay. Right.
You're just trying to get them to talk, right? Mm-hmm. They don't want to be there. Everybody's scared of public speaking. I just want to know a little bit about you.
And you're there asking them, who here has,
who here has smoked weed? And who here has driven a car? Who here has hired a prostitute? And you're like, do you know anybody that hired a prostitute? And they're like,
no,
don't ask me any
matter.
follow-up questions.
Please.
And even though you tell them, hey, if it's embarrassing, we can go to the front and stuff like that, a lot of times they just, don't want to answer.
I have to be honest about that. One, I would like nothing better to be called for jury duty.
You were never going to be
serve on a jury.
Nobody would leave you on there.
Nobody would leave me on there. I would say,
maybe a federal.
Maybe, I don't know, but
terrorism case you could sit on.
But the second thing is, I wonder whether any of the things that we ask about actually has any impact. Have you ever thought about hey, judge, just pick any old 12?
Well, I think I have threatened to do that. I'm like, look, this case is so good, I will take the first 12
I will take
in the
any
box.
12. I don't care.
I won't ask any questions. Just stick them in there and we'll go.
We'll go blind.
But I've never done it. I've bluffed it, but I've never followed through with it. But I did have a case down in Lamar County. I think I shared this with you where the way the jury's set up is the next batch of jurors is all in the galley as you are asking questions to the ones in the box.
This is in Lamar County. Lamar County is small.
Yes.
So everybody kind of knows each other anyway.
And once the first person said they want to legalize marijuana and they got removed, we lost 6 or 7 from that group. And then when
the rest of them saw it.
Right. And it was like popcorn hands. Yeah. People are like, can I go? I smoke weed all the time. I don't want to be here.
Right.
And so we ended up, it was right after COVID opened up, we couldn't pick a jury.
Because everybody was saying.
We could not get, out of 60 people, we could not get 12 to follow the law. And it was hysterical. And it wasn't a ton, but it was 5 pounds of marijuana. It was a big quantity of. 5 pounds is a big batch.
Yeah, that's big because it's not very heavy, right?
No, it's a lot of marijuana. Yeah. But so he got it was his lucky day.
So what did they have to do?
So they reduced it from a felony to a misdemeanor, and we paid a fine and went home. So
good job, as I always say. Good job getting criminals off. Very nice.
It's just weed, Ben.
I know.
It'll be legal in the next couple of years.
That's what you say.
It will.
But does it have to smell so terrible? That's the problem. Anyways, so
there's some kind of they've isolated that chemical.
Yeah.
And they're trying to take it out.
Are they trying to brand it as
yes.
as a kind
unstinky weed? They're trying to breed it out.
I thought you were talking about the
There's
opposite.
some kind of sulfur that is the same stuff that's in skunk spray. And so they've isolated it.
Which is why you call it skunk weed.
And now they're trying to remove it from the weed. So you would have odorless weed.
It would be interesting if they isolated it and then promoted the smell itself and put it in your little thing that goes on your... You could have a weed smell.
Guarantee every cop will search your car. Hang this off of your rearview mirror.
So, the question I have, and this news article doesn't address it. What happened to juror number 1 and juror number 9? These guys that the other jurors were accusing them of this misconduct, and we do have in the news article what the plaintiff's attorney thinks should happen to him, which is he should be, strung up by his toes.
Well, I have a prediction.
Should
be
brought before the judge, held in contempt, and fined, is what he suggested.
My prediction in Cherokee County is they will do nothing to the juror. That is my prediction.
The great Carnac. We actually watched that. At our office the other day because some of my staff members did not know who the great Carnac was.
Oh, come on.
Anyways,
you got to read the envelope.
And now,
time for questions from a 10-year-old.
How do you choose your clients?
All right, so that's a great question. There's this thing called Chat GPT. No?
I love Chat GPT.
Like it is really handy, isn't it?
One of my paralegals kept putting the craziest notes on her billing.
Yeah.
And it was just like weird. And I said, I'm going to help you. Let me download Chat GPT for you. And I want you to put that note into here first and then copy and paste that. And so
after that, her notes were perfect.
yeah, they're beautiful.
Yes.
They're beautiful. I said, because this goes on a billing statement to a client.
Right. We can't be looking janky, right?
It's going to replace all of us.
I don't know about that, but like it is handy. I'll tell you, in all seriousness.
And by the way, I was using it the other night.
I knew you had to have been. I'm like, no, like Dwayne does not talk like that. In all seriousness, here's what I do. One, I listen to what they have to say.
I'm picking a client.
We're talking about how do you choose your client?
Right.
There is this trade-off. I am running a business.
Right.
That business needs to keep these lights on.
We got people to feed.
We have families
Yes.
that work for us that depend on us being able to bring cash in and pay for the lights to be on and pay for the people to do the works. And so you have to weigh that with the interest of, I also want to represent somebody who I think is a real person.
Right.
Right? We talked about this kind of in an earlier episode. There's a difference between somebody who's a reasonable person and who is cleverly impersonating a reasonable person.
Which narcissists are very good at.
I'm telling you.
Yes.
It can be difficult
Yes.
to find. How do you decide?
Well, when I first started out, I practiced walk through the door law. So
Walk
that
through the
means
door.
if somebody walked through the door and could hire me, I did whatever they wanted me to do. Now that I've been doing it for 20 plus years, I can pick and choose the cases that I want to work on. So especially on the criminal defense side, I pick cases that I enjoy and where I think somebody's really been wrongfully accused or didn't do what they were accused of. And those are the cases that I find the most rewarding.
But also that can pay.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they got to be able to pay too. I don't do it for free.
Right, that's right. Well, we all would like to feel like if I was independently wealthy and didn't need anything, I would still have my door open and I would still be representing people because that's what I do. Like, I help people.
Well, and I'm really lucky at this point because I'm at a point in my career where I could charge a premium.
Right.
And I'll have people a lot of times say, well, I talked to so-and-so and he was half.
Yeah.
I'm like,
we'll hire them.
That's fine. I've got,
Yeah.
I got a lot of people who have demand for my services. So I'm able to charge more. And because I'm able to charge more, I can spend more time. And because I can spend more time, I can deliver a better product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also like to say, because in the personal injury world, our clients are not paying us up front.
Right.
What we're doing is speculating that we're going to get them money and that we're going to share in the recovery together.
Right.
We charge them a percentage. And there's this attorney calls himself the 25% lawyer. Why be paying, everybody, all this?
Well, they got in trouble for the misleading ads, right? Because they were saying they could get their clients more money. But that's not necessarily true because if I hire one guy and he gets $20 million,
right,
and I only get, and he takes a third or 40%,
yeah,
and I hire you at 25% and you give me $100,000,
right?
You didn't get me more money.
You charged
kept
a smaller
less,
percentage.
You took less of a percentage.
Yeah.
But sometimes you get what you pay for. So
Dwayne, almost invariably, you get what you pay for. And that's what I say. When a client is asking me about that, like, why should I pay you 33% when this other guy is charging 25%? And I say, look, you and I have been around long enough in life to know that you do kind of get what you pay for.
Well, and I hate to be this way, but I've gone out and talked to the officers about a case.
Yeah.
And the officer said, well, how much did he pay you? And I'm like, yeah, $15,000. He's like, man, that's punishment enough. I'll dismiss the charges. And I'm like, cool.
I made him
problem.
Him pay enough already.
I'm like, and it's terrible, but it's it's true. But too, that officer doesn't want to fight with me. He's fought with me before. He knows me. So you build on that reputation. But as far as picking your clients initially pick you, and then you get to pick if you want to represent them or continue to represent them or not. But like on the personal injury side, I always tell people, I'm like, look, if I spend a bunch of money on this case and I don't get anything out of it, I should have just went fishing.
Right. I could have spent money fishing or gambling or whatever, right? If I wanted to gamble, there's a lot more entertaining ways to gamble than to
because
gamble on
I don't
your
know about
case,
you, but people get very upset with me when I don't take their case. They're like, Dwayne, I'm like, I don't want this case. I don't want to do this case. I'm not going to.
To be fair, I really struggle with, I have a really difficult time telling people I won't.
Right.
Because it's in my nature to help people. And so even if they have really, really terrible facts in their case, I want to help them. And so I found some creative ways to do that. And sometimes my staff will actually intervene. And they'll say, no, Ben, we cannot help this person.
Well,
right.
And we have to do that too, where there's a client that's just a problem for whatever reason. Yeah. And we'll all have a staff meeting and they're like, let's just refund their money.
Give them their money back and tell them
we're just not a good fit for you. Because, some people will never be happy no matter what happens. And so you got to figure that out too.
I learned that in my first marriage. And it came out like this. You can't make people happy.
Right.
But you can make them miserable.
Yes, absolutely. My dad used to always say that, which, speaking about my dad.
Can you do a shout out?
Yeah, well,
he's on his trip, right?
Yeah, he's 75 years old. He's doing a 500 some odd mile canoe trip down the Chattahoochee by himself with a tent cot that's in the thing. And he's started up in Helen, Georgia, and he's way down in, I forgot, I just checked.
Someplace in Georgia.
Someplace in South Georgia now. He's in Jenkins right now. I can see him on the little app, so I keep up with him, but it's going to take 30 days.
You said that really fast. I wanted to slow it down.
Sure.
Your dad.
75 years old.
75 years old.
Yes.
He is paddling down.
Single man canoe trip, solo trip down the Chattahoochee.
Is there even a river that goes that far?
He's going to Chattahoochee, down to the Apalachicola, all the way to the Gulf of Mexico.
No, he's not.
Yeah, so there's there's 9 or 10 dams, so he has to have people to help him around the dams and stuff. But solo to raise money for missions.
Darn.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he's pretty awesome. But
that's great.
Dad always said, he's like, you can't make somebody do a job, but you can make them quit.
You can't make them miserable enough to quit.
And he's right. You can't make anybody do anything. They have to want to do it. So
I think to sum up, on the choosing your client, to me, the client may not get this right away.
Right.
But if I feel like they can get it, I want them to understand, I'm not providing a service for you. I'm not waiting on your table and you're going to tip me at the end if you feel like I did a good job. You're not a consumer, right? You're not paying me by the hour. We're in this together. And if you want to be partners in this, I'm all on board. As long as we're both understanding, this is a partnership. Let's do it. Let's work on it together.
Right.
Then I'm completely on board.
Well, I have people come to me and they're like, look, I'll give you an extra $30,000 if you can get my case dismissed. I'm like, man, I'm trying to get your case dismissed now. $30,000, I get to change nothing. I appreciate it. But
I appreciate it.
Go work harder. I'm working really hard right now.
All right. Well, thank you for joining the podcast. Please make sure that you subscribe. We're getting more and more interest by the day.
Comment down below. We want to see where you're from. Tell us where you're from, where you're listening from. If you have any questions, comment down below. Put the questions down there. Like and subscribe. Hit the little notice bell. We want you to hear from us. We want to hear from you.
Bing.
Bing, bing. Subscribe.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next time when Bob and Irreverent D talk law.